Your gutter. That's how it started. Not good morning, not how are you, not even a nice day, isn't it? Just your gutter. I was, up until that exact moment, having a truly fantastic Saturday morning. The coffee was a perfect medium roast. The birds were doing their bird thing, and the sun was just starting to warm my front porch. I was in that blissful Zen state of homeownership, the one where you look at your lawn and think, I could mow you, but I'm not going to. Then the sound came. Not a bird, not a car. The sound of high-traction running shoes squeaking across my dew-covered walkway. I looked up, and my Zen state evaporated. It was Brenda. Brenda is our neighborhood's, let's call her the voluntary compliance officer. She's the head of the HOA, the self-appointed neighborhood watch, and the reason our mailman carries dog treats and antacids. She lives across the street and slightly to the left, in a house that's a perfectly beige, sterile, joyless cube. She has a visor for every occasion. A gardening visor, a power-walking visor, and the one she was wearing now. The dreaded official complaint visor, a crisp navy blue number that just screamed, I have a clipboard, and I'm not afraid to use it. She was standing on my porch, hands on her hips, her visor pulled low. She had bypassed my sidewalk, a clear violation, I mentally noted, of Section 2, Common Walkway Etiquette, and marched straight across my lawn. Mark, she said, her voice like gravel in a paper shredder. Morning, Brenda, I said, taking a slow sip of my coffee. Beautiful day. What about my gutter? It's clogged, she said, as if I'd just confessed to a murder. Disgustingly so. She pointed a rigid finger up at the corner of my roof. When it rained last night, that deluge, it overflowed. It spilled right over the side, like a waterfall of neglect. I squinted. A waterfall of neglect. That's poetic, Brenda. Don't be glib, she snapped. It's creating a damp patch near my property line, right near my prize-winning azaleas. It's a blight, Mark. A blight. I wanted to tell her my entire life's ambition was to create a blight. I wanted to ask her if a damp patch was worse than the emotional void her beige house cast over the entire block. Instead, I just nodded. And, she continued, it's attracting mosquitoes. I'm sure I've been bitten. Twice. Right on the ankle. I'm documenting it. Of course she was. Brenda's life was a one-woman docudrama of perceived slights. A damp patch and mosquitoes, I said, trying to sound concerned. That's a double whammy. It's a violation, she said, her eyes narrowing. HOA Handbook, Section 4, Exterior Maintenance and Water Runoff. All gutters must be free of debris and in good working order. Yours, she said, gesturing again, are neither. I looked up. She wasn't wrong. There was indeed a healthy tuft of what looked like a small maple sapling peeking over the edge. I hadn't cleaned them since, well, ever, since we moved in 2 years ago. I'll add it to the list, Brenda, I said, turning back to my coffee. See that you do? She said, the words hanging in the air. Promptly. I'll be checking. She spun on her heel, a sharp military-style pivot, and marched back across my lawn, leaving a trail of tiny, angry divots in the grass. I sat there for a long time. The coffee didn't taste as good. The birds sounded like they were mocking me. She had assigned me homework on a Saturday. I looked up at the gutter. It was full, sure, but now it was a symbol. An overflowing, leaf-filled, mosquito-breeding symbol of my oppression. And I hate homework. Cleaning a gutter is, hands down, one of the worst jobs in the home maintenance pantheon. It's not just cleaning. It's an archaeological dig into the recent, disgusting past of your roof. I hauled out the ladder, my knuckles already scraped from just getting it out of the garage. I set it against the house, the aluminum leg sinking into the damp patch Brenda had so helpfully identified. The smell hit me first. It was the scent of rot, a deep, wet, primordial ooze kind of rot. I climbed up, balanced a bucket on the step below me, and put my gloved hands in. It was worse than I imagined. It was a wet, toxic sludge. It wasn't just leaves. It was an entire ecosystem. I found decomposed acorns, twigs, unidentifiable black mulch, 3 of those whirligig maple seeds, and a truly horrifying amount of bird contributions. It was a compost heap, 10 feet in the air. And thanks to last night's rain, it was now a waterlogged, smelly, heavy compost heap. With every scoop of gunk, I cursed Brenda. Scoop. Damp patch? Splat into the bucket. Scoop. Prize-winning azaleas. Splat. Scoop. Section 4. Splat. I was stewing. I was simmering. My Saturday was ruined. I was covered in filth. My gloves were soaked through, and I could feel Brenda's eyes on me from her living room window. I didn't even have to look. It was a physical sensation, like a low-grade laser burn of judgment. After an hour of this, I finally got to the downspout. It was, as predicted, completely plugged. I had to get a plumber's snake from the garage and just ram it down the pipe. Finally, with a disgusting thwump, the clog gave way. A torrent of brown, leafy water exploded out the bottom of the downspout, splashing all over the driveway. I was soaked, smelly, and annoyed. But I was done. The final step was to flush the system. I went down, got the garden hose, climbed back up the ladder, and jammed the hose nozzle into the gutter, turning it on full blast. And that's when it happened. The water, no longer impeded by the sludge, rushed down the channel. It hit the corner and funneled into the newly cleared downspout. It didn't just flow out the bottom. It jetted out. A powerful, concentrated, high-velocity stream of water hit the driveway with a satisfying psst. I stared at it. That was a lot of force. A surprising amount of force, all from simple roof runoff. My brain, which had been fixated on sludge and Brenda, suddenly shifted gears. I'm a tinkerer by nature. My garage is a graveyard of old electronics. My 3D printer is almost always running, and I have a bad habit of improving appliances until they stop working entirely. I love solving problems, and right now I had 2. I had a lot of wasted water energy, and I had a very annoying neighbor. What if I could solve both problems at once? I remembered my 5th grade science fair project, Mrs. Gable's class. I'd built a tiny water wheel out of plastic spoons and a cork, and it barely spun under the faucet. It was terrible. I got a C, but the principle was sound. Water wheel. A wheel spins. It can spin a generator. A small generator. A very small generator. What could a tiny, rain-powered generator run? Something small. Something low voltage. A light, maybe? My eyes drifted from the gushing downspout, across the lawn, to Brenda's beige-on-beige house. A light. A specific light. A light that only came on when it rained. A light that served a purpose. Feedback-oriented light. A slow smile spread across my face. It was probably a terrifying sight, given that I was caked in gutter filth, but I didn't care. Brenda wanted me to fix my gutter because the runoff was a blight. Fine. I was going to fix it. I was going to harness that runoff. I was going to use that blight and turn it into something beautiful. I was going to give her exactly the acknowledgement she deserved. I climbed down the ladder, a new spring in my step. I grabbed the hose to wash the gunk off the driveway. My wife, Sarah, opened the front door. "Oh God, Mark, what is that smell? Is it you?" "It's the smell of progress, honey," I said, beaming. "You're finally cleaning the gutter. Brenda will be thrilled." "Oh, I'm not just cleaning it," I said, coiling the hose. "I'm improving it. You know, for the environment. A green initiative, going to harness that natural power." Sarah looked at me. She knows me too well. She can spot my scheming look from 100 yards. "Why are you smiling like that?" "That's your I'm about to buy $200 of specialized parts from a weird website smile." "It's for the community, Sarah," I said, turning off the spigot. "It's for, Brenda." "Oh no," she said, and wisely she just shut the door. I went straight to my garage. I had work to do. That night, I didn't sleep. I designed. My garage became a command center. I had my laptop open, a legal pad for sketching, and a cold beer. My 3D modeling software, my old, reliable friend, flickered to life. My 5th grade spoon wheel wasn't going to cut it. This needed to be efficient. I went down a 4-hour YouTube rabbit hole on micro-hydroelectric generators. I learned about Pelton wheels, Turgo wheels, and propeller turbines. I decided on a modified Pelton wheel. It's designed for high-velocity, low-volume water jets. Perfect for a downspout. I spent hours modeling a custom-designed 24-bucket Pelton wheel, precisely angled to catch the blight. I designed a waterproof housing for it, complete with a tiny, sealed generator I'd salvaged from an old high-end scanner. My 3D printer whirred to life in the corner, a loyal soldier laying down the first layers of PLA plastic for my prototype. But this led to a new problem. My design was perfect, but the delivery system was flawed. A standard 3-inch gutter downspout was too wide. It would splash. I needed to focus the water. I needed to take all the runoff from that entire section of roof and channel it into a single, high-pressure jet aimed perfectly at my little turbine. This was beyond my skill set. I can't weld. I can't fabricate sheet metal. I could 3D print the wheel, but I couldn't build the cannon. I needed a professional. The next Monday, I made the call. I'd Googled custom gutter fabrication, and one name kept popping up: Gutter Gents. It sounded like a service that would show up in a top hat and tails, which I doubted, but their reviews were solid. A guy named Sal answered, his voice like he'd been gargling with roofing nails. "Gutter Gents, Sal speaking." "Hi, Sal. My name is Mark. I have a somewhat unusual gutter request." "Heard that before?" Sal grunted. "You want a custom color? Copper? You want one of those ones that looks like a rain chain with the little gargoyles?" "No, not exactly," I said. "I need a standard gutter replacement for one side of my house, but on the downspout, I need something custom." "Custom how?" "I need you to fabricate a special nozzle, a funnel. I need to take all the water from that gutter and funnel it down to about a 1-inch diameter opening. I need it to create a high-pressure jet. And I need that jet aimed at a specific point inside a custom housing." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "A jet? Son, you're trying to water your plants? 'Cause you can just buy a hose." "It's for a filter," I lied. "A new kind of kinetic water filter. It needs the water to be moving very, very fast." Another pause. "A kinetic filter. Right. Look, I'm just a gutter guy. I make water go from high to low. You want jets?" Could you just come and look? I'll pay for the consultation. I have diagrams. I must have hit the magic word. Diagrams, Sal said, his voice perking up. Yeah, okay. I'm in your neighborhood tomorrow anyway. 10 a.m. Sal rolled up the next day in a truck that had clearly seen a few things. It was a massive white Ford, scarred and battered, with gutter gents painted on the side. No top hats. Sal himself was a short, barrel-chested man with a magnificent mustache and hands like catcher's mitts. All right, where's the kinetic problem? He said. I led him to the side of the house. Brenda, naturally, was weeding her front garden, which was a good 40 yards away, but gave her a perfect line of sight. Okay, Sal, here's the deal. I showed him my 3D printed prototype of the wheel. I showed him my sketches. And then I just told him the truth. My neighbor, I said, tilting my head toward Brenda's house, complained my gutter was clogged. Sal looked at the prototype. He looked at my diagrams. Then he looked over at Brenda, who was now very obviously just standing there, watching us. Her? He said. Her, I confirmed. The one with the beige house? Where's the visor? That's the one. Sal looked back at me, a slow grin spreading across his face, revealing a single gold tooth. She called me once. Said my truck was leaking nondescript fluids on the street. I was parked for 30 seconds. So you get it, I said. I get it, Sal boomed, slapping me on the back, which nearly sent me into the bushes. A kinetic filter. I love it. Yeah, we can do this. You want a high-velocity jet? We'll make you a damn water laser. We were partners in crime. Sal got to work, taking measurements. We'll rip out this whole trough, he said. Put in a 6-inch industrial grade. We'll custom fabricate an aluminum catchment box right here. Taper it down. Weld a 1-inch reinforced nozzle at the bottom. It'll shoot hard, kid. Hard enough to spin that little whatever the hell it is. It's a micro-hydroelectric generator, I said proudly. It's going to power a low-voltage landscaping light. Sal looked at Brenda's house again. A landscaping light. Uh-huh. One that lights up her life? Just a general-purpose, feedback-oriented illumination device, I said. I like it, Sal said, writing on his notepad. Gonna be extra for the custom fab. That's a lot of welding. Sal, I said, some things are priceless. While Sal's team worked on the custom metal, I worked on the other half of the project. A trip to the electronics store and a long Amazon session got me. A 12-volt, waterproof LED strip, bright white. A voltage controller and a bridge rectifier to turn the generator's messy AC into clean DC. A custom-cut 18x12 acrylic panel. High-grade outdoor caulk. I spent the next 2 evenings in the garage, meticulously wiring. I drilled holes in the acrylic, fed the LED strips through to spell out my message, and then sealed the whole thing in a grotesque amount of caulk. This thing needed to survive a hurricane. Sarah found me in the garage, hunched over my creation, a soldering iron in one hand. It smells like burning plastic and victory, she said from the doorway. The sign is done, I announced, holding it up. The wiring was a rat's nest in the back, but the front was, well, it was something. I can't read it, she said. It's just a bunch of white worms. It's not plugged in, Sarah. It's not supposed to be. It's eco-friendly. It's rain-activated. What does it say, Mark? She asked, a little nervous. Just a simple thank you note. For the neighborhood. A thank you note? For Brenda? Well, she is the one who inspired this whole green initiative, I said. Sarah just sighed, but I saw her smile. I'm both terrified and deeply, deeply proud of you. Just make sure it's not illegal." "Illegal?" I said, feigning shock. "It's just a gutter, honey. And a light. What's more legal than that?" Installation day was a Tuesday. I took the day off work. Sal and his gutter gents crew arrived at 8 a.m. sharp. It wasn't just one truck. It was 3. A big fabrication truck, a ladder truck, and Sal's personal command center pickup. It was loud. It was glorious. It was, as Brenda would say, excessive. As if summoned by the sound of diesel engines, her front door opened. There she was, visor on, coffee mug in hand, her face a mask of profound suspicion. The crew got to work. They were a symphony of clanging aluminum and power tools. They ripped my old, clogged and blight-filled gutter off the house in about 5 minutes flat, tossing it to the ground with a crash that echoed through the quiet suburban morning. Brenda, unable to help herself, marched across the street. "Mark!" she called out, her voice barely audible over a guy using a power saw. "Mark!" I walked over, all smiles. "Morning, Brenda. Great day for an install, huh?" "What is all this?" she demanded, gesturing to the small army of men on my lawn. "I just said it was clogged. This is a circus." "Well, Brenda, you were just so right," I said, pouring on the false sincerity like maple syrup. "It was a total blight, a systemic failure. I got to thinking, why just clean the problem when you can solve it? So I'm replacing the whole system. Top of the line. I'm taking your feedback very, very seriously. This is all because of you." The look on her face was a wonderful mix of flattered and furious. She wanted to take credit, but she also hated the commotion. "It seems loud," she finally said. "That's the sound of compliance, Brenda," I yelled back. Sal gave me a wink from the roof. The real show started around 11 a.m. That's when they brought out the device. Sal's crew had outdone themselves. It wasn't just a gutter. It was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive engineering. The 6-inch trough was a sleek, glossy white. But where the downspout should have been, there was now a custom-fabricated, brushed aluminum box. It was about the size of a shoebox with a detachable panel. And coming out the bottom was the nozzle, a single 1-inch pipe that looked less like a downspout and more like the barrel of a cannon. Brenda was back. She'd been at her window, but this was too much for her to observe from afar. "Mark!" she shrieked, running onto my lawn. "What is that? That box!" Sal, sensing an opportunity, hopped down from his ladder. He was a born showman. "That, ma'am," he said, tapping the aluminum box, "is the new EcoFlow runoff containment system. State-of-the-art. Very European." Brenda's eyes narrowed. "European?" "Oh, yeah," Sal said, warming up. "They're doing this all over Germany. It's a kinetic particle filtration hub. Takes the, roof particles and kinetically filters them before they hit the groundwater. You're welcome." Brenda looked at the box. She looked at Sal. She looked at me. "It looks mechanical." "It's just the, filter," I chimed in. "Like Sal said, very green. We're doing our part." "It's got wires," she said, pointing to the small, waterproof sealed wire that I was preparing to run from the housing. "Low voltage, ma'am," Sal said, shaking his head sadly. "For the filter sensor. Lets him know when the filter is full of particles. It's just a little sensor light." Brenda was not convinced. "It's an unapproved modification, Mark. I'm certain of it." "It's a gutter, Brenda," I said. "Sal, is this a gutter?" Ma'am, I've been installing gutters for 30 years, Sal said, his hand on his heart. And this is the gutterest gutter I've ever installed. Top of the line. She huffed. I'm documenting this. She pulled out her phone and started taking pictures. Pictures of the box. Pictures of Sal. Pictures of me. Get my good side, Sal yelled, striking a pose. She stormed back to her house. She's fun, Sal muttered. She's the muse, Sal, I said. She's the muse. The last step was mine. After Sal's crew had packed up, after the new, beautiful, weaponized gutter was in place, I got on the ladder myself. I installed my 3D printed Pelton wheel and generator inside the housing, connected the wires, and sealed the access panel. Then, I mounted the sign. I'd been clever. I'd bought a sheet of blank white vinyl and covered the acrylic sign with it. Right now, it just looked like a blank white rectangle. An 18 to 12 piece of abstract art? A for sale sign with no text? It was ambiguous. I screwed it into the siding, right below the EcoFlow box. I ran the wire from the generator and caulked it into the back of the sign. The trap was set. I could feel Brenda's gaze burning a hole in my back as I climbed down the ladder. She was on her porch, phone to her ear, talking in a low, furious voice, probably to the HOA president. Oh, wait. She is the HOA president. I gave her a polite, two-finger wave. She did not return it. The project was complete. All I needed was rain. And then it didn't rain. For 3 straight days. The sky was a perfect, brilliant, cloudless blue. It was a mockery. I had built this incredible monument to petty vengeance, this beautiful machine of malicious compliance, and it just sat there, inert. I became obsessed with the weather app. I'd wake up and check it before I even checked my email. Sunny, high 78. Mostly sunny, high 80. Partly cloudy, which was a lie. I was a farmer in a drought, pacing my porch, staring at the sky, willing it to rain. Brenda, on the other hand, was not idle. On the second day of the Great Drought, I got an email. It was an official HOA notice of violation, complete with a PDF attachment. Subject, violation, unapproved exterior modification, Section 7. Dear Mr. Mark, my last name, it has come to the attention of the board, i.e. me, Brenda, that you have installed an unapproved mechanical and/or lighting apparatus on the exterior of your property, in violation of Section 7, Architectural and Aesthetic Standards. The apparatus in question, see attached photos 1 to 14, is not in keeping with the community's aesthetic, and its purpose is undetermined and suspicious. You are hereby ordered to cease and desist all mechanical activity and remove the unapproved box and signage immediately. Failure to comply will result in a fine of $50 per day. Sincerely, Brenda. Her last name, President, HOA. The 14 photos were impressive. She'd used a zoom lens. You could see the threads on the screws I'd used. I spent a very enjoyable 30 minutes drafting my reply. Subject, violation, gutter maintenance. Dear Brenda, thank you for your inquiry regarding my recent gutter upgrade. I'm thrilled to report that, thanks to your diligent feedback, my damp patch issue is resolved. Per your note, the items in question are 1. A EcoFlow runoff containment system, as installed by Gutter Gents, a licensed and insured local contractor, see attached invoice, and 2. A low-voltage, eco-friendly landscaping feature. As this is a standard gutter replacement and an unpowered ornamental attachment, I'm confident it falls under Section 4, exterior maintenance, and not Section 7. The sign itself is currently blank, and as it has no power source, is no different than, say, a welcome plaque. I'm excited for the whole neighborhood to see it in action during the next rainstorm. It's going to be very green. All the best, Mark. I attached Sal's invoice, on which he'd brilliantly listed the custom part as 1X runoff filtration hub, $450. The email war was a nice distraction, but I needed rain. On the third day, Brenda, apparently fed up with the HOA's slow-moving bureaucracy, escalated. I was in my home office trying to work when I saw it. A police cruiser, rolling slowly down the street. It pulled up and parked, lights off, right between my house and Brenda's. 2 officers got out. They looked tired. This wasn't a crime in progress walk. This was a why are we here walk. As if on cue, Brenda's front door burst open. She marched out to meet them, visor on, pointing dramatically at my house. Officers, thank you for coming. It's that. I sighed. I saved my document and went outside. Afternoon, officers, I said, walking onto my lawn. The first officer, whose name tag read Miller, looked at me. He looked at Brenda. He looked up at the contraption on my house. He sighed. Afternoon, sir. We got a call about a suspicious machine on your house? A spy gutter! Brenda shrieked from the sidewalk. It's got wires! It's probably tapping into the power grid, or spying. I've seen him tinkering. He's probably spying on me. The second officer, Jones, raised an eyebrow. Spy gutter, ma'am? Officer, it's a gutter, I said, trying to sound as reasonable as possible. I just had it replaced. That box is a new kind of water filter. It's a lie, Brenda yelled. He's got a light. He's going to flash things at me. Officer Miller looked at me. Sir, is it on? On? I said, confused. Officer, it's just a gutter. It's not hooked up to anything. It's ornamental. It's powered by rain. Powered by rain, Miller repeated, rubbing his temples. And as you can see, I said, gesturing to the painfully blue sky, it's not raining. It's not on. It does nothing. Sir, Officer Jones said, is this device on your property? Yes, officer, attached to my house. Is it making noise? No, officer. Is it spying on your neighbor? I almost laughed. Officer, it's a gutter. It's pointing at my driveway. Unless I've developed a new technology that lets me spy on people through aluminum, no, it is not. Officer Miller turned to Brenda, his patience clearly gone. Ma'am, there is literally no crime here. It's a weird-looking gutter. That's not a 911 call. Have a good day. But the wires, Brenda sputtered. Ma'am, have a good day. The cops got back in their cruiser. Brenda was fuming. She was vibrating with rage. She had called in the authorities, and they had sided with the gutter maniac. As the cruiser pulled away, I gave her a polite, 2-finger wave. She just stared. If looks could kill, I'd be a pile of ashes on my perfectly compliant and not at all a damp patch lawn. The first battle was won, but the war needed rain. I went inside and checked my app. Tomorrow, 80% chance of thunderstorms. Showtime. The next day, the air was different. It was thick, heavy, humid. You could drink the sky. The beautiful, mocking blue was gone, replaced by a low, bruised purple ceiling of clouds. The 7-day forecast was finally making good on its promise. I spent the day working, which in reality meant sitting in my living room, staring out the front window, nursing a single cup of coffee for 5 hours. Sarah, my wife, had taken to just shaking her head and walking past. "You're like a kid on Christmas Eve," she said around 3 p.m. "It's better than Christmas," I muttered. "Christmas is predictable." By 5 p.m., the sky was almost black. The wind started to pick up, making the big oak tree in the front yard sway. The smell of ozone and wet pavement, that pre-storm smell, was so strong I could taste it. And then it happened. One drop. It hit the window with a tink. Then another. Tink. Tink, tink, tink. Tap, tap, tap. And then, as if God himself had flipped a switch, the sky opened up. It wasn't just rain. It was a deluge, a torrential, biblical, Brenda wasn't wrong about the overflow kind of downpour. The street vanished in a sheet of water. I stood at the window, grinning. "Come on, baby," I whispered. "Fill her up." I waited. The new gutter was catching gallons of water. It was funneling it all, every last drop, into Sal's EcoFlow runoff containment system. I heard it before I saw it. At first, it was a faint sound, almost lost in the roar of the rain, a high-pitched electric whirring. "Whee!" "Sarah!" I yelled. "It's spinning! I can hear it!" Sarah ran into the living room, a dish towel in her hand. "You're kidding. It's actually—" The sign flickered. It was a weak, anemic flash, but it was there. The whirring sound got higher, faster. The little generator was hitting its stride. The Pelton wheel was a blur. The sign flickered again. Once. Twice. And then, as the turbine hit maximum RPMs, the bridge rectifier smoothed out the current. The controller opened the gates, and the waterproof, bright white LEDs blazed to life. They were so bright, so clear, a perfect beacon of petty justice in the storm. "Thank you, Karen," Sarah gasped. She put her hand over her mouth. "Oh, my God, Mark," she whispered. "You didn't." "What?" I said, taking a triumphant sip of beer. "You used the name. The K word. I thought you were just going to put thank you." "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, my voice dripping with false innocence. "Her name is Brenda. Who is Karen?" "Karen is... It's a generic term, a term of appreciation for a vigilant neighbor. It's totally ambiguous." Sarah looked at me. Then she looked at the sign. Then she started to laugh. It was not a small chuckle. It was a full, deep, I can't breathe belly laugh. "You," she finally managed, wiping a tear from her eye, "are a terrible, terrible, wonderful man." And that's when we heard the shriek. It was not a yell. It was not a whoop. It was a genuine horror movie, "The killer is in the house, and my ankle is broken" shriek. It cut through the sound of the rain like a knife. We both looked across the street. Brenda's living room light was on. Her silhouette was frozen in the window, one hand pointing at my house. She stood there for maybe 10 seconds. I imagine her brain was trying to process the data. Rain, gutter, box, wires, light, Karen. The processing finished. The rage overload began. Her front door burst open. Brenda, in a bright pink bathrobe and what looked like fuzzy slippers, ran out onto her front porch. She was vibrating. She pointed her phone at my house, trying to film the sign. But the rain was so heavy I doubt she got anything. "I knew it!" she screamed, her voice cracking. The sound was primal. I knew it! She wasn't done. She ran off her porch, into the pouring rain. Her slippers were probably ruined. She stood in the middle of her lawn, soaking wet, her bathrobe plastered to her, pointing at my house like a wild-eyed prophetess of the apocalypse. Harassment! She bellowed at the sky. This is harassment! I am not a Karen! I'm Brenda! You hear me? Brenda! She turned her sights on me, though she could only see my dark window. You gutter maniac! You'll hear from my lawyer! You'll hear from the police! I just stood there, in my warm, dry living room, sipping my beer. The sign above me glowed, a cheerful, helpful, "Thank you, Karen," illuminating the storm. It was, I thought, the most beautiful landscaping light I had ever seen. Brenda was nothing if not true to her word. 10 minutes later, through the driving rain, I saw them, the familiar, flashing red and blue lights. A cruiser pulled up. The same cruiser. I could see the silhouettes of Officer Miller and Officer Jones inside. The car just sat there for a long moment, its lights turning my living room into a disco. I could practically hear their shared, heavy sigh from across the street. They got out, rain jackets pulled up. They were met in the street by a drenched, hysterical Brenda. She was pointing. She was gesticulating. She was, I'm pretty sure, crying tears of pure, unadulterated rage. Finally, Officer Miller, a man who was clearly at the end of his rope, gestured for her to go back to her porch. Then, he and Officer Jones trudged across the street, their boots squelching in my damp patch. I did the neighborly thing. I opened my front door, staying in the dry but visible on the porch area. The sign was still glowing. The turbine was still whirring. It was a beautiful symphony. "Officer Miller! Officer Jones!" I yelled over the rain. "Good to see you again. Rough night to be out." Miller just looked at me. He looked up at the sign. He looked back at me. I could see the muscles in his jaw working. "Sir," he yelled, You have got to be kidding me. Thank you, Karen." "Harassment!" Brenda shrieked from her porch, her voice now hoarse. See, he's mocking me. It's targeted harassment. Arrest him." I put on my most confused, innocent face. "Officer, I'm so glad you're here," I yelled. "The sign's malfunctioning. The storm must be shorting it out." "Shorting it out, sir?" Jones called, stepping up, a small smile playing on his lips. "Yes, it's a thank you rain sign," I said with utter conviction. "You know, to celebrate the hydrology, the green energy, but the K and the N must be, I don't know, stuck on. It's just a terrible storm-related electrical fault." Officer Miller stared at me. He knew I was lying. I knew he knew I was lying. He knew I knew he knew. We were in a beautiful, unspoken stalemate of absurdity. "A thank you rain sign," Miller repeated, deadpan. "He's lying!" screamed Brenda. "My name isn't Karen." This was it. The final move. Officer Miller turned, slowly, to face Brenda across the street. "Ma'am," he shouted, and his voice carried. "Is your name Karen?" Brenda stopped. "What? No, I'm Brenda!" "Then it's not about you," Miller yelled back. He turned back to me. "Sir," he said, "your neighbor feels targeted." "Targeted? Officer, I'm shocked," I said. "My name is Mark. Her name is Brenda. I honestly don't know any Karens. Maybe it's a tribute? To a past owner? I just bought the house 2 years ago. How would I know, right?" Officer Jones, to his credit, turned away, but I could see his shoulders shaking. Miller just sighed. He looked at Brenda, who was sputtering, defeated. He looked at me, the picture of innocence. He looked at the sign, which was still cheerfully thanking Karen. "Ma'am," Miller yelled back to Brenda, "his sign says Karen. Your name is Brenda. As insulting as you find this, Karen is not a protected class. And it's not your name. It's not harassment, and it's not a crime. It's just a sign on his property. Please go inside." It was done. The checkmate. Brenda let out one last strangled noise, a cross between a sob and a growl. She gave me a look of pure, unadulterated hatred, and then stormed back into her house, slamming the door so hard I thought the glass would break. Officer Miller walked up onto my porch, out of the rain. He stood close. "Off the record," he said, his voice low. "Thank you, Rain." "It's a terrible short, officer," I said, shaking my head gravely. "Right," he said. He looked at the sign, then at me. That is inspired. On the record, you're a pain in my ass. This is the last time we're coming out here for this gutter. Understand?" "Crystal clear, officer," I said. "Have a good night, sir." "You too, officer. Stay dry." They left. The rain started to taper off. As the flow slowed, the whirring sound died down. The sign flickered one last time and went dark. I was left alone on my porch in the quiet, post-storm air. The next morning, the sun was out. The sky was scrubbed clean. Brenda's blinds were all drawn. They stayed that way for the entire weekend. When I went out to get the mail, I found a 6-pack of a very nice craft IPA sitting on my porch. There was a note attached. "Thank you, Mark. From 14, the lawn height violation, and 18, the unapproved wind chime violation." I smiled. I grabbed the beer, went to my garage, and started thinking. You know, that generator was really efficient. I bet I could hook it up to a small battery. Maybe the sign needs a holiday mode?